Hello, everybody. I am back with another exciting live. Today, I have a guest continuing on our topic of Pride Month, continuing to bring in people who I think have been so influential to the community. And I'm just gonna pin this comment first, and then I'm gonna add our guest on. And we'll continue to introduce her. So Siba, if you are here, please send me the request and we can get this ball rolling. I'm so excited for today's guest because she is a dear friend of mine, but I'm not being biased. I didn't invite her only because she's my friend, but because, she forms a part of the LGBTQIA plus community and she is an activist at heart. So this will be an interesting one. As soon as I can find her, Siba, if you can send me the request. Let's see. Okay, I can't see her yet. Siba, if you're here, please let me know so that we can get the conversation going. Let's see. Okay, I'm waiting for her to come on, but I hope you guys have been well. Hope you've had a fantastic week. Oh, there she is. I've had a fantastic week. Got to cut my hair, you guys. I don't know if you can tell, but I got a haircut yesterday because salons have been open. Hi.
Hello.
Oh my God, you look amazing.
Thank you very much.
Sis, I'm so excited for this. I was just telling them that today I'm going to be speaking to my friend, but
Yes.
I'm not being biased because you're not here only because you're my friend, but because you are because you are a member of the LGBTQIA community. You are an activist at heart. You are the youth of South Africa, and you are such a voice. And it was so necessary to have you here today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And to some of you who might not know Siba, we participated on Miss South Africa together. She was one of the contestants, made the top 10. She was amazing through and through. She is the first contestant to ever come out as queer. For the Miss South Africa pageant. And so it made such a huge wave. And I think it was such an incredible moment for the community, for you to be a part of us. And so we're going to get this rolling. I have so many questions for you. I hope we can have more of a conversation.
So happy I'm cat. I'll be sorted. I'll be good.
Okay. Siba, when we look at Pride Month, we think of the riots of Stonewall in 1969. We think about, celebrating that moment. When you look at that moment today as, a young queer woman in 2020, what does that day mean to you? Like, do you think you're still facing the same issues that the people of 1969 faced, or are there like different challenges for you today as a queer young Black woman?
I think that history is in itself very cyclical. So there's a lot of things that we want to say are in the past, but actually travel through time with us unless we as society change. And so with respect to that moment, like years before I was even conceived or even thought of or could have even dreamt of being the person that I am, I think that there's still a tangible history and presence about what people from the LGBTQI community still experience today. It was a progressive wave that made it possible in some respects for me to be queer and on a platform like Miss SA, for instance. So I think that there's a lot that people have had to endure over the years, but it is all have been strides that make it more important for us to realize that we can't dim ourselves down, first of all. Secondly, that the work hasn't been completed yet, and that in some ways we still do experience some of the antagonism that we might have a little bit more visibility, but what we're still fighting for are some rights in certain countries, and also for homosexuality to be outlawed, because that's still quite a big thing. Some people on this continent, on the African continent, would die for just being openly themselves, So it's I think in some ways there are parallels. And also, let's not forget that there are lots of kind of like underlying differences and nuances that we need to think about. So being white and queer is different, but being black and trans, for instance, is a completely different conversation. Where you are in the world definitely speaks to a different experience of queerness. And those are the kinds of things that, and the kinds of challenges that make it different, right? So we're not fighting for the same rights in the kind of like general sense, but I think that there are ways in which that the fight has improved and has completely taken a new form.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think I just read a post by someone, I don't remember who posted this, but they made so much sense. They said to the people who have boards up while they're protesting, boards that say, we are not our ancestors, we will, the F word, you up. Someone said they find that quite offensive. And I found it quite offensive as well, because I said, we are where we are because of the people who came before us. We should never forget that there are people who came before us who fought for the things that we have now. So in as much as they didn't finish the journey, they did their part. And so really, it's truly up to us now to actually grab that baton and try to do our part as well. And so I love that you say that. Speaking of riots and protesting, we can't help but see parallels and similarities between the Black Lives Matter movement and, the riots that happened during Pride Month. I mean, when we speak of police brutality and when we speak about the marginalized, the struggles that are faced by the marginalized people, there are so many parallels that it's almost like the same thing. For you, what do you think is the significance of protest, and how important is it for us to continue using our voices to speak out? Like, what is the importance of speaking out and saying, listen, I have something to say?
I think protest is a powerful tool of activism, specifically in South Africa. So our history, a lot has been changed because so many people, for different reasons, have gone to the streets, whether it was women's rights, whether it was education rights and language barriers, whether it was freedom and, the right to affiliate to whatever political party they wanted. And so naturally, because it is a tool of activism, it gets picked up, continuously throughout different movements. Yeah. And I think the importance it holds is just that, for instance, in South Africa, it's a constitutional right that people can gather. So if you take that away, that in itself is a silencing mechanism. So for instance, I really think that it's beautiful that we have a piece of legislation, the highest one in the country, that recognizes the importance for people to voice out when they are unhappy, or to voice out when there's a need for change, to voice out when there's a need for representation, when there's a need for them to be reflected in the system, right? Because when we speak about representation, we're not talking about television ads, we're not talking about magazines, we're talking about basic human rights. We're talking about legislation we need to be written into the laws. We need to be able to access healthcare, we need to be able to access education, which are all different socioeconomic aspects that every person is entitled to. So I think it's an empowering tool. I mean, there's so many different times in which I've taken to the streets in my own country.
I know. We know.
I don't know if I ever told you this one time, but for the organization I used to work for, which was fighting for education rights, we once slept outside Parliament. Spent the entire night camped out outside Parliament, which is the law-making body of the country. So things like that kind of shake the system. If anyone is trying to leave you out of the conversation, it is a beautiful tool to be able to take up arms using your voice or using your actions and your actual body physically in the space. But I actually also think that there's so much danger that comes with that, right? So police brutality isn't exempt simply because you said you're going to do a peaceful protest. In our country, sometimes you can apply to go on protest. So you speak to the police and they kind of cordon off the route of the protest that you want to take. But that doesn't guarantee your safety always. And I think that in different contexts, for whatever reasons you are protesting for, some may be viewed as okay and others are completely like, why would you take to the streets for this? So, there's also a lot to unpack about protest. And I want to, I think, highlight some of the vandalism that happens during protest, which is always a distraction. It's a deterrent. The people who are there trying to fight for basic rights, can't be lumped up as the same people who are taking it upon themselves to destroy or to be barbaric. You see, that kind of language is kind of the things that we still need to peel away and kind of, educate people more about what protesting is and what demonstration is.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Protest. I love that you mentioned that you've done so many protests, because I believe you, because I have been there too. We've seen so many times where protesting has actually changed how things are. Protests, people speaking out. The more people speak out, the more things change. We've seen it happen so many times. We've seen it in South Africa with Fees Must Fall movement, where fees for university were just hyped up, and we took to the streets and we said, absolutely no way, not in a South Africa where, the poor are already marginalized. How are we going to study? And we saw change happening. And so this is why I think it's so important during times like these, for Pride Month, for Black Lives Matter, for any other social issue, it's so important to speak out. And I saw a post that you put out one day where you said, if people then don't have their own voices, can they at least share, like do something? Don't sit and not do anything, because when you sit, you are taking, the side of the oppressor. So say something. If you can't share people's words, but just have a voice. Just put your hand up. Absolutely.
I just want to just add a little bit on that. I think a lot of the time, for people who are new to activism or who are new to using their voice, there's a certain fear around being labeled as in a particular way, right? So you and I, we don't mind if someone hurls a word at us or says something, because we know that what we are standing for is just and is what needs to happen. But for some people, kind of attack kind of seems like, whoa, I didn't mean to. So it's really, I always think that as I'm going to a march and I'm not, I don't necessarily experience what people are marching for, but I'm there as a number. Because that's always what we speak about, that like we have more impact when we are together. And so even in the moments where you don't have anything to say or you're not sure about what to say and that there's fear, it is still important. It is especially important that you also chip in, because we are an amalgamation of the views and beliefs of people around us.
Absolutely agreed. I want to speak about a different kind of protesting, a different kind of riot, one that you did. You and I call it protesting. We call it, you protested, girl, when you went and entered Miss South Africa and you were like, look, I'm queer. This is me. My name is Sibabalwe Gcilitshana and this is what I stand for. That on its own was protesting, because it's something that had never been done before. And you were like, listen, I'm just going to go on ahead and do it. Why did you make the decision to actually, come out as queer and to identify and be like, this is me, I'm going to enter Miss South Africa this way? Why that decision? Why did you feel it was important?
It's actually very interesting, because when I set out to do it, I think about my country and I think about my context, and I think that there are so many queer people around me. So I'm not special in that way, right? And there's a platform and it's speaking about women empowerment, and it's about, having a voice, and it's about having a story to tell. And I was like, well, okay. I think that the meeting point or the intersection of all of these different aspects of myself, being young and Black, being queer, being a woman, being being someone who was rural raised and comes from a working class family, I'm like, I have a feeling that there are other people who are like me and who would really benefit to just know that it's possible. And this is also before you know you're going to go as far as you do. I get to the day, and then it turns out that I'm the first one to be openly queer. And then I'm just like, whoa. From that point onwards, the moment you become the first, you're literally changing. You're going against the grain. You're going against the norm. You are trying to do something that other people don't necessarily do, and so there is going to be pushback immediately. But in the true sense of protest, protest isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's about those soft moments where you feel you can, because not everyone can. But I bet you that I'm pretty sure there must have been an increase in the number of queer entrants this year, simply because of something like that.
Because someone did it.
Where we want to get to. Miss Universe is notorious platform for having had Angela Pons, first trans woman on the platform, which is like phenomenal. And I think about those parallels because I remember I told you when we were in Miss SA, one of the organizations that picked up the story about me being a first queer entrant was the Miss Universe pageant, or Universe platform. So just to see that it's not an anomaly, that it's not these isolated cases of there's this and then there's that, you know, it's like, I listened to one of your other conversations with Gina and how she speaks about transgender pageantry as core of the culture in the Philippines, you know, and when are we going to get there? When do we start to celebrate people in that manner? It's that it's a disgusting thing that doesn't have space, that it's just, you know, it gets as much love, it gets as much celebration as everything else does.
Absolutely.
So I think it was just important, I think, for me, and because it came from such a genuine place, it translated. It became important for other people to see me just being. And I know a lot of people always ask about whether or not, you know, I was met with a lot of homophobia. And I was like, you know, interestingly, I never went in assuming that people would be homophobic. I didn't look for it. And so I don't doubt that it existed somewhere. But also simply because I had such a positive mindset about what I was doing and what the intention behind it was, I felt like I was just embraced by so many people and by my community because it meant so much in a way that I'd never imagined it would.
Absolutely. I remember, for you guys who don't know, Siba was my roommate. Yeah, we stayed together for a whole month. So she probably knows me better than a lot of people. But Siba, you used to have interviews literally every day, about like 5-10 interviews. And I remember I would sit there and feel most of the times when I was listening in to your interviews, I would sit there and think, you know, Siba is so incredible. She has so many things going on for her. She stands for so many things. Her story on its own, what she believes in, her activism. And I feel like it's things that a lot of people missed because they were too focused on speaking about your sexuality, which was so unfortunate because whenever I had an interview, nobody asked me about my sexuality. They asked me about the things that I believed in. They asked me about women empowerment. They asked me about education. But for you, I feel like a lot of those things were missed because people were so focused on that. Like, do you have anything like to say to that? Like, when do we get to a point where sexuality becomes a sexuality and we don't make it the main thing about who you are? Because it is very important. It's a part of who you are, but it's not all that you are.
I think, that was probably one of the most challenging things about getting so much media attention. I wish I could have said, you know what, it's just divvy up some of the and there is one day in particular where I had a really difficult interview and I just came back and I cried that I'd never before, because I think it slowly started to get to me. Firstly, there's a power in consistency in telling the same story until it is heard. And I think that in one part, that's what was important about having all of those interviews and unfortunately saying the same thing, is that whoever this article, this interview would reach next would hopefully be a different audience to the one who had seen something else before. And until everyone has, for instance, so this is now just a generalization, until everyone has engaged with that first piece of media, with that first piece of information, any other like layer kind of falls flat unless they have. So you and I need to have the conversation about the fact that people's sexual orientation and gender identities live on a spectrum. You need to understand that before you can understand why it's important for me to be in certain spaces. So when people only engage with the second layer, I think it loses completely the kind of effect it would have in building an engaged, informed, and educated society and community in general. So, I mean, it was extremely difficult. It even changed my experience in some ways. I had to step away from participating in some of the things while in the pageant because I was attending to these interviews. And after a while, and also not everyone is warm in how they're going to approach it. So you are going to have a really great interview today, and then tomorrow you're going to have a really, really sucky one because whoever is interviewing you just wants to challenge. And when I was on air the one day, they said, can you tell me, can you guess who here in this room is gay? And I was like, what do you mean? I mean, sorry, I didn't know that it's something that you can just see.
Like you can just guess.
And that's also part of it, is that if people still believe that they can tell by looking at you if you're gay or not, then we have so much more.
We have so much, because do you remember, this is actually so funny, you guys, because yes, people, let me tell you something on that topic of people look a certain sexuality. So Siba came out as queer, and some people didn't know who Siba was. I guess some people hadn't seen a photo of her or didn't know which one of the contestants, was queer. And literally immediately, a lot of people thought immediately people thought I was the one who was, queer because I had short hair. And I was like, it was mind blown that in 2019, we still look at people.
I really hope that this is the queer contestant, because somehow, if there's a checklist out there, then, short hair's on it. I just want you to know.
It was wild. And I was like, no, it's not me. But like, it's really funny that you would look at me and think it's me just because of my hair. Because sexuality does not look a certain way. It's how people identify.
It doesn't even live in your expression.
Yes.
I would wait all day and be heterosexual.
That was one of the wildest. And when you had that interview and they're like, can you tell who's gay in the room? Like, are you kidding me?
Gosh.
Why?
And it's unfortunate. You know what? That moment still lives with me. Like, it's not something I necessarily want to always carry, but there are those very sensitive moments where someone misgenders you, calls you a him instead of a her, or calls you a he, she, a boy, girl. I mean, those for me are even the deeper kinds of sorenesses about being the people we are, that people are sometimes maliciously refusing to engage and to understand. And being non-binary and being trans must be, it takes a lot, but it also just means that we don't stop. We don't stop until we get to a point where all the children we bring up grow up understanding that we are inherently different. But there's nothing that is ever going to be the same about us. And just because we are born with the same body part dictates nothing about that experience.
You said it so well. And I really want to say, in as much as you had this moment, Siba, you were so necessary. You were so necessary as a contestant. You were so necessary for the time, because like you said, because you did it, a lot of people were like, okay, then, surely if Siba came out there and was able to, to walk in and be herself 100%, then, a lot of doors should definitely be opening for me as well. Me who identifies, differently than, maybe other people can. And so we're so grateful, so happy that you have been there. A lot of people ask me, if you didn't win, who would have you wanted to win? My answer, it remains the same. It remains the same, unmoved. No,
I think I heard that in an interview, and I nearly dropped my phone. I was like, what did she just say? Because it's one thing for you as a person to be able to see something in yourself, but when other people kind of see it, and it's not really about the platform, it's just about the potential to inspire, the potential to do change, the potential to ignite a wave of people who just refuse to take no as an answer. If you say that you can't get married, we'll say no. You can't vote, we'll say no. You can't have children, we'll say no. You know what I mean? So it's just it's very validating to have people that just look at you and just say, you being yourself, that is enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Siba, I wanna we are in Pride Month. We're also in Youth Month in South Africa. I've been explaining it to everyone. Everybody knows by now. Everybody knows what June 16 is and what Youth Month is. Again, we are looking at protests. We are looking at police brutality. We are looking at using our voices to effect change, which is something that people of 1976 did in June. Those students were marching for something completely different to what the youth of today faces in South Africa, but we still do have challenges. We have challenges like fees, we can't seem to be able to pay our university tuition. And if we are able to pay our university tuition, we can't get jobs because the unemployment is just like, skyrocketing and sky high. And how does it feel right now being the youth of South Africa? Again, when you look back to 1976, they were fighting for something that we kind of still are fighting for even today, because it's still systemic, it's still institutional, it's still there. It's just maybe a little different than it was. So how's the experience being young and Black and queer in South Africa today?
Someone told me the other day that they read a post that said being Black and being a woman is like being Black twice. But I really think that we just need to just like add another layer. And again, when you're young and you're Black, and again, if you're young, you're Black and you're woman, and again, if you're young, you're woman and you're queer. Being all of these things isn't purely about struggle, just by the way. I think that sometimes connotation that like, oh, life is so difficult and it's so hard, and it is, as it is for other people. And the thing to do as an ally or as someone
Siba, you're breaking a little. I'm losing you. Okay, so we're just gonna have to wait for. Are you? Yeah. Okay, you're back.
Hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. People of the Wi-Fi, don't intervene. So I think on the youth question, I think youth in my country are amazing. They're vibrant. They are people with passion. They are people with ideas. And all we need is access. In the same way, being Black and having so much to offer and needing access, that being gay means you're phenomenal and you live this diverse life, but you still need access. And so that's what that I would say probably is the running theme throughout all of them. It's unfortunate that you can almost progress to a certain point and then there's a barrier. You can be a great woman, but we're not going to pay you the same as everyone else. You can be young and educated, but how do you find a job that's going to have benefits for you, that's going to allow you to pay black tax, which I don't think is a term that most people are familiar with, but it's just that when you come from a black, poor middle class family, you progressing and moving up in society, if we can even that, but it's just really just having a decent living means that responsibility to bring everyone else with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Your family depends on you when you're the only person who's graduated, first to graduate in that family. So I think that there's a lot that being young comes with. You either most likely are going to come out of university with debt because there's a student. So we have what we call the missing middle in South Africa.
Yeah.
You're sometimes too rich to qualify for assistance, and yet too poor to actually afford it.
Yeah.
And there's always a conversation about that line, is that the reality really is that I think that it's still an illusion, because until everyone has access, then having some access doesn't make it better, or it doesn't differentiate, because we're still fighting for the same thing. Unemployment is high, and I think that what happens is that over time, young people become completely discouraged.
I'm losing you a little. Like your Wi-Fi is a little shaky. Your Wi-Fi is a little shaky right now. Yes, fighter babes, and yes, you don't like. But
Let me just
you're like going in and out.
Okay, so I've
I think
switched
you're
over to
moving
data
now.
if the Wi-Fi is being.
Okay.
Am I back
Let's
now?
hope we don't run out of data. You're back. Please don't run out of data.
A question. Imagine. I'll have to just keep checking it. And someone told me that I should actually get it in case the Wi-Fi acts up. And now here we are.
Yeah, here we are. At least I can hear you. So that's good. That's good.
You're a little bit fuzzy, but if I'm okay on your side, then I think let's keep going.
You are looking a bit fuzzy on my side too, but I can hear you, so I think that's most important.
Okay. Hopefully it just clears up.
Yeah.
And toggle back in. Sometimes I can see. Sorry, I have my laptop here with me, so I'll be able to just check if connection is still there. Okay. So I think being young comes with so much more, including having to prove yourself, right? So most people don't have an established career. You don't have any, I suppose, like net wealth that you've built up that you can explore other things. And often I feel a lot of young people are almost narrowly pushed into a route as the only means to survive and get through. But in the spirit of the Soweto uprising, I think that we can't let that get us down. And to whom much is given, much is expected. There are a lot of things that as human beings we can be grateful for. And it's not always the same. It's not about comparison, but there are basic things that we still need to get. And for people who are change agents in their communities, who are people who are committed to developing young people, those are the champions that are going to take this and kind of like take it over the finish line. It's very difficult. It doesn't make it any easier along the way. It wasn't easy in 1996, and it's definitely not easy in 2020. But each generation kind of has its own battles, and struggle continues.
Yeah, we continue. Like I said, pick up the baton and run our own race. And you really spoke about how being a Black woman is like being Black twice. I want to speak about gender-based violence right now, and how literally women are like at the bottom of all of it. at the bottom of all of it. We when we look at just not only South Africa but the rest of the world, especially when we came into the pandemic, the numbers literally shot up, you know, of women being abused, women dying, women getting raped. In South Africa, we saw, you know, that women only last year, you know, women were complaining, you know, they went to the parliament, they spoke to the president, and they said, you know, things need to change. And there were discussions about change coming. But clearly, as we can see, not a lot has changed because women are, you know, in fact, still dying. Like, what are we doing wrong? I mean, we've protested, we have made pledges, we have donated, we've done everything, and it feels like everything is just falling on deaf ears. And for me, it's like, what more can we do? What is it that we're supposed to do to be protecting women at this point?
You know, it doesn't lie with us. It lies, I think, with society at large. And I know that sounds very big because, like, when you say something like that, it's not tangible. You're not saying this is the problem and this is what we need to fix.
Yeah.
But let's imagine a society where when we go to school, gender-based violence is something that is covered extensively. Can you still hear me?
Siba, I'm losing you again, which is so unfortunate. You're in and out.
Why is it doing this?
Did you switch back to Wi-Fi?
You know,
it's doing, you know, that whole looping thing that it does.
I was going to say, dare I suggest that Miss Universe has bad Wi-Fi? I think I would be chopped up into pieces.
How dare you? How dare you? Do you think it's me? It's not me. I don't know. Do you think you can? I don't know if you can move to another corner because it's you that's like a little. I don't know. With people watching, how am I looking? Am I breaking as well, or am I good on my side?
I don't see people saying anything about the connection.
Okay, well, you're back. I can hear you clearly now. Okay, so let's tackle, you know, the gender-based violence, and maybe I'll take 2 questions or 3 questions from the people. We'll answer that, and then, yeah, call it a day. But,
yes.
Yeah, we've so much.
While the Wi-Fi is still behaving.
Yes.
I'm going to say, imagine a society where we go to school and gender-based violence is covered extensively. Covered extensively to such an extent that people know that it's okay to report. People know that they will receive support when they do report. People know that there is healthcare that is going to acknowledge it. People know that when they get to the police service, when they get to the police station, that it's not going to be brushed off and unaccepted, because a number of cases go unreported because of the manner in which the intake of the case happens. And people know that if they need to leave, there's a provision that can be made, right? So when I say society, I really just mean that there's more than one aspect that we need to look at here. And some of it is governmental, but also some of it is societal, in the sense that what are we teaching our children? And often people say it's what you teach the boy child, but it's really what you teach everyone. Yeah. When you teach us, as Chimamanda says, to shrink ourselves, when I'm in a situation in which my partner is being violent to me, I don't feel empowered enough to say something about it. And it's quite likely that the only reason a parent, a guardian, or someone looking after you would suggest that is because they have experienced it themselves. Yeah. That they have seen that if you try to report it, you're either escalating the amount of violence that you're going to experience by trying to expose your abuser. There's shame, public shame that is, this connotation that people are weak, that it happens to them or that they deserve it. And also, again, talking about stereotypes and the manner in which people look, that an abuser looks a particular way, that they have to, an alcoholic perhaps, or they have to struggle with addiction, or that they can't be reputable members of society. And you quite that is part of the education that we need to do, that it's not someone foreign, it's not something random, and it's also the kindest person you can imagine, the sweetest person, the one who helps out everyone in the community. It's also that person. So
I want to, See, I just want to jump in a little before you continue with what you just said of things not looking like people or a certain way. There's one statement that gets to me that I hate so much when people say, these men who kill and rape women are not real men. They are monsters. And I'm like, no, they are men. And that's where the problem starts, with saying that they are not men. They are men. They are fathers. They are brothers. They are friends. Like you said, they're the kindest people that you know. And so we need to stop that mentality of saying that people who do these things are not real men, because they are. They are real members of society. They are people who are in high places.
Category. Like, it's only acceptable for monsters to do this, but you could.
Exactly. So I think, like you said, that's the kind of education that we need to be instilling at a very young age, for both boys and girls. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it really is something that we really, really need to look towards. I know you were saying something, and I think I cut you off, but I'm so scared, Siba, because of the connection, and I'm so scared of running out of time. So I want to take 2 questions, right? From people. If you guys have any questions that you can send in on the question box thing. I don't know what it's called, Siba. I know it's a question box thing.
Comment box, the comment section.
Wow, someone is asking what's queer, and people have many definitions of queer. They want to know, like, what does that mean?
What does that mean for me? I mean, like you said, queer has lots of different definitions. Quite interestingly, it also used to be a very derogative term, right?
Yeah.
So I think people today who are much older hear that word. It's almost, I don't want to say this word because I really, really hate it, but when you use the F word to refer to someone who is gay.
Yeah.
I despise that. And I mean, like, throughout society or throughout cultures, we all have a bad word to use to describe someone who's different.
Yeah.
I think that recent youth or like younger members of the LGBTQI community have adopted that word, because queer means different. It means against the norm. That is really what the true definition of that word is at its core. And so you can actually, as a person, when you are queer, it means I'm politically queer. It means I am sexually queer. It means I'm also perhaps scholarly or intellectually queer, just that it's not only associated to your identity or your gender identity in that way. So for me, I would say, when I talk about embracing a different way of understanding. So I see someone saying, "Are you gay?"
Are they asking, are you?
And I just saw a comment now that said, "Are you gay?"
Wow.
I identified with queer in terms of my gender identity and sexual orientation simply because I didn't, when I came out to myself and I suppose to people around me, I didn't feel like there was any other of the acronyms that described what my experience had been, and that I felt like this was nice and open. It meant that I'm not limiting myself to only feel and identify this way now, but also that it goes a little bit beyond just how I identify.
Yeah. Okay. I hope whoever asked that question.
Are you?
Are you? Yes, she is. People. To whoever is very curious and asking, yes, I'm guessing that person just joined in.
What are the 3 things South Africa? Whoa, there's so many questions coming through.
Wait, do you see one you want to answer before we can part ways?
It's gone.
Is it gone?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to pick one. My question box thing is not working now. I don't know what's happening.
Ooh, question box. I have a question.
Someone says, how do you create safe spaces for students in primary who are being abused in school?
Ooh. Okay. So in the same way, well, the way I see it, in the same way that we always talk about needing recognition for things at a systemic and an institutional level, the state, by law, does provide social workers, right, to be dispatched across primary and high schools. But the issue is that they are under-resourced, and what you often end up having is you've got one social worker for an entire district, which has multiple schools. So first of all, teachers need to go through screening, right? You can't have teachers who have been previously sex offenders somehow making their way into the system. And this is something that has actually been discussed and debated at parliament level when I used to work in that space, that there needs to be a thorough screening, and even then it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So then what's the next thing? You need to instill in children a culture in which it is okay to talk about things. There is nothing taboo and there is nothing that is off bounds. And if at home parents can't create that environment, the school culture needs to have it, because the only way that anything that happens in the school will come out and will go undetected is if someone speaks. And that's really how you build, kind of sustainable change, is that if they're used to speaking about things when they are wrong and when they are right, and just in general, when that child moves through life, every time they encounter something that should be addressed, it doesn't go on. So I would think that, just resourcing the current group of social workers and psychologists and child psychologists, and also just like, this is very random and off the top of my head, but I don't think that it would be wrong for people, or not for people, but like organizing kind of like group sessions for kids to kind of like speak, because a lot of the way that children perform in schools is based on what things are happening at home. Yes. And for as long as you kind of create this bubble that when a child is at school, they're at school, that what happens outside of school doesn't affect them, you're kind of negating that experience. So if I grew up in a particular home where I've had to really struggle looking after myself, my parents are not there, when something happens to me, I can't go to my parents and tell them, because they're either not well or they're not present. So to have a channel in school is like phenomenal, and that's the future we're building, everyone. Like that's where
we're looking. Oh, Siba, I think that's all we have for questions today, because I'm so scared. I forgot to time. I don't know where our time is, but Instagram does that thing of cutting, and I want to save this and keep it on the Miss Universe page so that people who weren't able to listen in can come and listen in. There's so much that I wanted to talk about that we didn't have to get to, but when we get together, we can speak for hours and hours and hours. So, Siba, thank you, friend, for coming in and gracing us with your beautiful presence, and for dropping wisdom, teaching us more about pride, about Black lives, about women and empowerment. And I hope you continue to use your platform. You've been doing this way before you did Miss South Africa. It's been your thing, and I love that about you so much. So thank you so much for taking time to have this conversation with me, and for all that you do, man, just for your existence.
Right back at you, sister friend. I think that it's really great that we could have this platform and that you could afford me this time. I mean, I can definitely speak about all of these things we just spoke about in my own time, but being able to extend our experiences beyond just our small circles is really something that we should be always able to do, and infinitely grateful for. So thank you so much. It was a great chat. I loved it.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much, Sibs. Bye.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us for, another incredible live. I think the most important thing that we learned today is the power of our voices, the power of protest, and just the power of, being there for each other and being able to sit and say, if you have a voice, the most important thing is to use it for, the greater good. So if you've learned anything today, do not be afraid to be brave. Do not be afraid to be different. And do not be afraid to put those things on your platform, because they are part of who you are, and they will in turn shape the future and maybe change the future. You never know. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks once again to Siba. And I will see you next time on Tuesday for another live. Bye. Have an incredible weekend, everyone.